Welcome, everybody. This is Wild Wednesdays, and I didn't schedule this class because I was traveling, but I thought I'd spend some time going through a couple ideas. Today, I'm going to work with the fish spine. How do we come back to the origins of our spine, not as a column, not as something you're trying to hold up, but is actually a living organism that moves like a river and a caterpillar and has lateral fish motion and articulations and expression. I'm pretty adamant about this because your core tissue called psoas comes from the spine out of this center. It was never attached. Okay? You grew as a spine-based organism, a tubular being in the womb. And as your cells organize around this axis that we think of as our core, this is how we show up in the world. And if that is dead, if you got a dead fish inside, you're trudging along, you're shuffling, you're pulling yourself by big quads, trying to bring yourself forward into the world. But this is a heart field. This is an oscillation of the longing to show up here on Earth. So what does that mean for us in movement? It means that we're dry, we're stunted, so to speak. We're not flourishing in the very core of our being. We're not juicy. We're not responsive. I'm not talking about reaction. I'm talking about response. I'm talking about communication through the physicality of our tissue, not a psychology, but a biology. So let's begin on the floor. I'm going to work with how to reactivate your fish today. All righty. So I'm headed to the floor. And if anybody joins me, welcome. But as I said, I didn't put it in my schedule because I was traveling and I thought I might be traveling today. So I'm here and let's do some movement. So to start to activate my fish, I use an inflatable ball. And I'm going to put it behind my psoas and heart area where the spiral flip occurs. This is the place where babies move from. They move their entire spine, but I'm looking for lightening up so you can see me a tiny bit better from where I am. There we go. And so we want a spine that moves. And we think that goes away as we get older, but actually my spine moves more now than it did when I was in my 20s. Okay, so the idea of articulation, of rotation, of curling and arcing, these are movements that come from a fluid organism. That's what we are. We are born in and shaped in the oceanic waters of our mother's womb. And we come here from the void, and bone first showed on the earth in the waters. So we are fluid. And if we don't move as a fluid organism, we are dry, we're compressed. We might feel a lot of irritation in the system. And so much of what's being offered is about calming us down, because we are terrified of the wild, because wild seems out of control. So culturally, human bodies, to me, are dry, they're kind of dead, people don't have much expression, and we're terrified of misbehaving. So a lot of it is our conditioning, the conditions of our life, the conditions of being human, and also a construct that has carried over enough generations that we've forgotten its origins. We've forgotten that, we are nature. We are the living system of life itself. So how do we re-enter that relationship? How are we with land? How do we now be land? So let's see what we can do here to start to warm up the cold heartedness of not knowing who and what, where we belong. Put the ball right behind your psoas. And drop in. Now, how big the ball is means that you have to have the ribs be able to land in it. I want to land in the ball. I don't want the ball to be pushing me. I'm not looking for the arc right now, although I am not going to tuck my tail. So I'm going to come into constructive rest. This is constructive rest, but I'm doing it with letting the ball behind me. If you don't have a ball, just put your hands on your ribs to go into the back of the ribs and feel how they're weighted on the floor. But with the ball, an inflatable ball that you really, really bring down to almost nothing, you're now able to feel the fluid shifts of the spine. And you're just rocking that spine back and forth. And I'm using my hands to kind of demonstrate that rock. And I'm going to do some long exhales. Now, my pelvis really isn't moving. I'm moving inside my pelvis. My legs aren't shifting. They're not falling and moving around. I'm moving my spine. That's tail to tongue. That's the axis of the core of your being. You could wrap your arms around yourself, hug yourself to feel more of the tubular torso. But inside, deep inside is where we're going. So the very core of your axis is not in the back, it's in the center. Your center of the psoas is merging out of this fluid, bony, before bone, autonomic nervous system, what we call our spinal cord. Bone just protects that. Pick up your knees if you want and rock more like a baby. Ah. And then pause for a moment. The pause is an opportunity to feel, not to do, to feel into what has been invited and what shows up. I'm gonna, seeing I'm recording today, and I have someone come on, welcome, but I didn't schedule this. And so I'm gonna see if I can pin myself. There we go. So thanks for joining me, but it's a small class and no class because I didn't put it on my schedule. I didn't put it on my website or until later. So here we go. So we're gonna work with the fluid spine today. So now move up a little bit, kind of between the psoas, which emerges out of your core right at the lower ribs, 12th thoracic vertebrae, and below that, or maybe just below that, and then go up a little higher. So, right, we're headed up to the heart, but we're between those two. Arms are important. Arms are an expression of the heart. So whether you spread them, whether you place them on your knees to kind of feel more of your bones, whether you cross the arms, all of these ways will feel into the back body differently. And I'm going to slow now the little wave motion of rocking. I'm just going to go slower.
If you were going slow, you might want to speed it up. In other words, change the rhythms a little bit and then pause. In the pause is where your living system, where your organism comes alive, where the caterpillar wakes up, comes out of the cocoon, you know, into the butterfly. So the arms, you could say, are the butterfly. So the transformation of a core that's been too quiet. I've been working more and more with people privately now that I'm relocated on the West Coast, and almost everyone has too quiet of psoas, upper psoas. So you have two innervations to the psoas. You have a lower one for the hip sockets, which most people feel are tight and rigid, and they want to stretch. They want somebody to palpate it. They want somebody to release. They have psoas issues. No, you don't. You have dryness. You are just drying up. Okay, and certainly the changing of the Earth's temperatures are going to not make a better psoas for sure. The upper psoas is right here at the gut, and it's so expressive of how we control ourselves. Because if we lose control, it's perceived as something horrible will happen. But the controls of quieting the core is submission. It's the tail tuck. It's submission. It's fear. To be expressive is to care, is to love, is to show. It's not, we think we're explosive. We're explosive because we're so dry. We're kindle, we're kindling. So let's bring some fluid into our movement. How would we do that? Well, sound is one and small rocks is another. The other one is a little bit of like tipping and rocking. You can use your hands into your feet. So these are undulations that just flow. You literally are a river. Your spine has curves to it. It has this beautiful undulating dance. And you see that through the cultures that live close to the sea, close to the ocean, that don't believe in a kind of colonized construct of controlling and mechanizing the body, closer to nature. So as we come back onto a relationship with Earth, we're with Earth, not on it. We're not on her, we're with her. Slow down and let your spine start to feel into the ball. In other words, instead of the ball moving your spine, which is a rock, now you're seeing, can you let your spine dance with the ball? Where is it touching the ball? Does it have any impulse to move, or is it just very, very dry? So we can try bubbling up some fluid by a little shimmer, little rock. I'm just rocking my spine up and down, kind of like and I might play with that movement and kind of let it get bigger for a moment here. If I have injuries, I have a lot of scar tissue, I'm gonna have to go a little slower, a little softer. Now move the ball up towards the back of your heart, kind of right between your scapulas, and play here. Slow down, drop in first, go small. So rather than get big and flail, get small and soft and land in the ball. Or if you're using your hands. It's much harder to be flat on dry land. Okay, it's easier to put yourself in water to find these movements, or in a bathtub or a pool or a pond or a lake or a inflatable ball. There's no right way to do this, but there are cues from your body that tell me for myself what feels pleasurable. So pleasure is my guide. So another sound I like to work with is the SH. It's not to suppress, it's to let the vibration penetrate the field through a long exhale. It's almost like air just leaking out. Because unless I can allow myself to fully exhale, then I don't really feel the parameters, the interior terrain of my own being. And pause. Now, being in the pause doesn't mean I'm stopping. Going into the pause means I stop doing something. I stop imposing on my system, and I'm here to receive, to be receptive. I'm noticing sensation. I'm noticing interior movement. And I trust my biointelligence incredibly. It's brilliant. So I don't think I have to suppress or control or behave or train my organism. All of that is such a top-down control. Now, at first, you might find yourself flailing a lot. So if you are flailing, meaning your head is kind of jiggling, your legs are shaking, whatever's happening, or you just feel so overwhelmed, then this is where some weight along your body can be really good. Maybe you have a pillow you can wrap your arms around, or cover yourself with a blanket, or put, if you have some, if you happen to have some sandbags around, or some weights of any kind. I mean, literally a stone, sometimes you just have to feel the ground, feel the earth. That's called landing. And in my book, Stalking Wild, PSOAS, Embodying Your Core Intelligence, landing and locating is an essay. And you can just go to that essay, and you can go to a class that's called Landing and Locating, and learn to land, learn to feel the earth within you, to feel how you are of the earth. Yeah. We are made of dirt. We are made of the waters, the stars, the sand, the sparkle, all the elemental beings of the earth. We are a microcosm. And this incredible moment of being a part of something much bigger than ourselves, and yet being able to be present to it, is the gift of being alive. So we're waking up this spine. You put your hands close to your clavicles, right up there. That's your high heart. Just tap it a little bit. Then let that go. So the tail to tongue is lateral fish motion. And I'm going to see what happens when I have that idea that right here, I'm activating that lateral C right here. Now, I have that now, and it's so delicious. So delicious. Could I even have more? I think I could. I think there's places along my spine that are still not fully awake. But I'm not going to push it. I'm going to let the little wag of the tail and the tongue do its own magic, do its own medicine. And then I pause. You know, I start an impulse, and then once it awakens or it starts to activate something else, I'm curious. I'm just letting life move me. I'm being moved. When was the last time you were moved by something? Really moved to tears, to laughter, to joy? Joy is different than happiness. Much bigger. It's a pleasure of simply feeling the life of me, you know, the liveliness of cells, of tissue, of expression, of the sensory system. So now I'm going to take the ball away, and I'm going to go into constructive rest for a moment, and I'm going to see how that moves my spine now. So the primary movements, what I call primal expression, is the curl, the arc, and the wave motion of lateral expression. When we go into lateral, if there's any lateral feeling along your spine, like it is a snake, it is a caterpillar, it is a river, that's awakening. That's so powerful for healing, for health, in terms of we're imploding in the amount of toxins. So the only possibility is to be able to keep moving internally, to allow things to keep moving through and not get stuck, you know, to be, because there is no health in terms of getting away from the level of poison, quite literally, that humans have created on this earth. So I can't try to be not part of it. I am. I am the ecosystem. I am nature. I am Earth. So I'm feeling the same that all other living systems feel. But as I free up my spine from being a column, I have the opportunity to allow things to keep changing. I want that change. I want the brilliance of nature, brilliance of life to move me. Wherever we're going, whatever this is all about, however the larger life, the larger field of potential. So there's unraveling, there's expression of, cellular breathing. We're looking for the lateral ribs to undulate. So I intentionally work with fetal curl and arcing. So let's roll and go into fetal curl for a moment. Put your hand on your pelvis and your hand under your head. So this is how I work with the living river of your spine, is to feel the tongue to tail relationship, quite literally. They're always talking to each other. What's in your head is in your pelvis. So as I feel the breath of my body, the movement that's undulating quietly through me. Actually, it's pretty active right now. Could I stop it? Of course I could. But why would I? You know, I'm here resting on my floor, and I'm letting these rhythms that I initiated, that I started, but are still continuing. It's like kind of undamming, the river, and all of a sudden there's this rush. Ooh. I can feel it in my hands. So I'm like carrying I'm holding it. And I might rock a little bit if it feels overwhelmed, because dryness, what does dryness bring? Dryness brings tears, dryness brings sweat, dryness brings fluid back into tissue. If you move, if you invite it. It knows how to seep into the driest part of us, especially if we add a long exhale or a little rock. Then we allow the tissue to reopen, the connective tissue to feel its full matrix of hydration. Bones float in that matrix. Organs can get lush and express the potency of the energetic field. So much happens there. And then just rest for a moment, putting your hands wherever they're comfortable. So what I see lost in people is this curve of the spine. They actually can't curve their spine anymore. It's so dry and rigid. It's like a stick that won't bend. So you can't use the head as a lever for trying to get the spine to move. You have to move your spine back. So put your hand on the ground and move your spine back and curl it. And then let it be wherever it normally is. And then rock it. So you're playing with kind of cat and cow, but not doing a very big one. It's not about the head or the pelvis. It's about the spine. Can I round the spine? And then pause. Now see if you can curve the spine, going into the tail up and the tongue and the eyes floating up. But it's not, again, in the head or the pelvis. The tail to tongue is to keep you in your central nervous system. So it's not a distortion of your body of any way, or a kind of accommodating the lack of movement. So most people use their head or do weird things with their pelvis because their spine doesn't move. We're working with the spine today. So see if you can let the spine feel the entire relationship to the axis of the skull down to the tail. And I'm lifting my tail like a squirrel or cat, but my eyes and my head respond. If yours doesn't, this is where you've lost spinal flexion and extension. So play with that. And don't use the head to try to throw it back, but maybe let the eyes drift up and beyond to help the tail find its lift. And then pause. Move spontaneously, not orchestrated, but however your organism wants to move. Take it off its leash, take it off its training gear, take it off the wild you. Well, how injured is the wild you? How depleted? How tormented? It's like opening the cages in all the zoos. Where would the wild go? Yeah. We're losing wild. We're killing him. So where it begins to be renewed is in you. To not be afraid of the wild, but to be entranced, enchanted, to go into the woods, into the wild, into the myth of being alive. This is where soul of your spine. PSOAS is called the muscle of the soul. I wouldn't use the word muscle because I don't think of it as a muscle. It's an organ of perception. It tells us the deep relationship with what brought us here? How did we arrive here? Where did we come from? All the unanswerable questions, all the unknown, all the mystery. That is the wild. We think we've controlled her. We think we've captured her. But whether we're a man or a woman or whatever creature we are, however we express ourselves, it's much, much bigger than we are. So into the mystery of your own spinal cord, how it came to be, how you came to be, how the tail and tongue want to dance together. Let yourself just be moved. You might be grieving how dry you are, how deadened you've become, how much you've suppressed any impulse of pleasure, impulse of other than what you've been told to do. Against your will, against the impulses of what are called primal impulses. Primal impulses. Oh gosh, that sounds scary. What will I do? Will I bite somebody? Will I scratch them? What will I do? But the wild is not what humans make it to be. It's our interpretation. It is us who are, is the dogma, maybe you could say, that's so controlled. So what do I do with this now that I've got maybe a tiny bit of wave motion? How am I going to show up in the world? So let's play with where that impulse happens. Roll onto your back. We're going to play with the fish movements. So when you were an infant and you were on your back, there was some point where you flipped. And the moment you flipped, the fish flipped. That's the moment of locomotion. Mom and dad, or whoever's caring for you, can no longer leave you on a bed or raised up on some object because you flipped. And that means you're going to roll, you're going to scoot, you're going to end up somewhere else. Okay, so you can fall. So we know that we have to be, caring about that. So I want you to straighten your legs out, put your feet together like it's a fin. Like you have one fin as a fish. And we're going to take our fish spine and we're going to curve it to one side. So think of the fin begins to go to, say, the left, and so does my head, but I'm not tipping my head, I'm curving my spine. So put your hands on your spine and curve from there. Okay, that's a fishy movement. Now come back and do the other side. Rollers my way. So now I'm going to go to my right, and I don't have as much range there. Okay, so you might find that as you take your fin and you move it a little bit to the right or the left, the rest of you goes, what? Huh? The stiffness, it might be both sides. So I'm going to stay here in my core and I'm going to keep working it to bring my head. I'm not going to use my head. I'm not going to use my upper spine. I want it to come from my psoas heart area. Okay, that's where the flip happens, is in the heart. So in the what we call the cervical of the thoracic vertebrae. So that's the driest part of us, was where we're supposed to flip. So it's a little stiffer on this side for me, So then I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to the left again and feel, oh wow, that feels so freeing. But when I come to the other side, now it might be both sides for you, it might be one side more than the other. So I don't know, but I'm just playing with what does that feel like? And notice the adaptations, like my head wants to bend because my ribs won't open here on the left side, there's less movement of the ribs. So I'm going to kind of play with that. I'm going to actually touch my ribs and feel, can I get the spine? I'm rocking myself here in the, wow, in the lateral movement. And then I'm going to pause and I'm going to see if the fish kind of can find something on its own. So the tongue, you have to let float, just as the tail can't be taught, for you to feel the entire fish motion of your own spine. And then we're going to come back to neutral. So we're going to play with flipping. So you have to have enough space around you that you don't hurt yourself, because your body actually has a natural flip. I have a history of scoliosis, so I noticed that my spine doesn't quite know that how to set in motion the flip. It's kind of iffy, okay? It doesn't quite do it. Maybe you have scar tissue, maybe you've had spinal surgery, maybe whatever is going on for you. But here's the deal, is if I fake it with a little bit of pressure in my heel, you could use your arms. That's what babies often use to make the flip, but only when they're reaching for something. But often, because they're curious and they want to move and their arm can go somewhere. So we're going to try it all different ways. But ideally, you actually want to feel the set of motion of the rotation of your vertebrae that sets you off into the flip. In other words, the fish they have fins, but the fins aren't used to make them flip. Their whole spine flips. So we want to try to localize the flip. And the best way to do that, if you can't find it in your vertebrae yet, is to stimulate them and then push down with one heel or both heels to get the flip. Okay, so we're going to start all in the same direction. So I'm lengthened out here, and what we're going to do is the long side, the side that, I'm closing on one side to create the lateral movement, right? I'm moving to my right, and so my right side is actually a little shorter than my left. One of the ways we can do to help us feel that is to let one arm go over, so we know where we're working. So I let my right arm come over my head, and I grab it, and I'm gonna pull myself into that long banana shape, and my feet are gonna follow it. So now I'm long on the left side, and my eyes are kind of looking up. So now the flip takes place in the spine, but not rolling towards the right, but flipping towards the left. Isn't that interesting? You're actually setting in motion something that is going to happen in the spine. So when I'm here, this arm that dragged me over is going to get very close to my body like the fish. And I'm going to lift my heart, and I'm going to start the rotation of the vertebrae right in front of my, right in the heart area, this whole area, the thoracic vertebrae are going to start to rotate. And my eyes follow that rotation, but they don't lead. And as they start to lift and rotate, I push down with my heel, and it takes me into the flip. Now, if your head falls when you do this, that's a primal response. They're called primal reflexes. And I hope to do a class this year with somebody who's an expert on primal reflexes, but you can find it in Google. One of the primal reflexes is to be on your belly and to be able to lift your hands and go into this movement for 30 seconds. If you haven't done this, if your head drops, then you actually have a movement that has never been integrated into your, and these primal reflexes are different than primal expression. They are pieces that actually begin in the womb and bring you through the birth canal. So if you don't have these undulations in your core, because you never had enough room to develop them, or enough fluid movement to develop them, because mom had too tight of abdominals, she sat a lot, maybe in a work situation where she wasn't dancing, we're sitting, we're moving, we're driving cars, we're doing the job she had. So it could be ergonomic, it could be also our social construct, in which we're really abdominally obsessed with having a certain look to our body that's very small and narrow and deep and no shape shifting. So it's an aesthetic issue. But it can also be that you never went down through the birth canal. And so C-sections can disrupt primal reflexes, as do a lot of other things. So integration of primal reflexes is important to then come to these dynamic expressions that you're capable of having. And you can learn to integrate them through movement. So check that out. Okay, so let's row back and do the other side. So I'm going to create a fish spin with my feet. They're together, they're active. My feet are active, wiggle your fish fin, move it up and down. So your legs are one, but your feet can move and separate, but you're in your fish body. Okay. And now extend the right arm, grab it, and start to pull yourself into that fish space. It looks like a banana, right? You're longer on one side than the other. That's what you're creating. Okay. And then bring your left hand close to your body, lose having arms, right? You're just one big fish. And let the spine, the way I think of it is the sternum floats. It starts to float up, and it activates the erector spinae along the spine. And those tiny little muscles are intrinsic to the psoas. If they don't have tone, the psoas is compressed and it dries out. So this is actually moistening psoas, freeing it from the bonds of a tight back of the heart, or a lack of tone. So it could be either one. But the dryness there means you have to kind of sponge those vertebrae. And the way you do that is kind of rock them, like, think of it as you're setting off something in motion. You're setting something in, and so you're activating these vertebrae, and the tissue that gets activated is the erector spinae. And as they get kind of set in motion, they might flip you. And if they don't, eyes are following that motion. If they don't, then I push down on my heel and it takes me into my flip. Yeah. So see, find your fishy motions in the spine. What I love about this exploration is that whether I have to use a little pressure or not, I'm faking it till I make it. And each time I do this, I feel the energy of my own heart. I feel the energy of my spine. I feel this incredible liveliness in my psoas, because if this tissue can't do this movement and rotate, I don't have freedom here to really speak my truth, to really move through my life as how my soul journey might be. I'm beholding to whatever restraint. And where we learn to control our emotions is through this area. So upper psoas is vital to opening up the breadth of expression that's not an extreme, but is a nuance of all kinds of feelings and all kinds of subtle expressions. And kindness can be one of those expressions. Kindness to yourself, kindness to others, a sense of peace. It's not, expression isn't something big necessarily. It can be very, very subtle, but it's the juiciness of flow up and down the spinal cord. So let's try that one more time on both sides. If your head flops, see if you can allow the head to come from here, not in the neck or the axis. In other words, again, think of you're working from the center of your fish to both ends and letting it express that beautiful kind of, when you watch a dolphin or you watch a creature come from the water in that full arc of expression. Take it there. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to let's see, I'm going to work with my right hand first. You can work with either one. I have my feet together, my fins are ready. I'm extending out and I'm using my hand to guide the shape of the fish. And it's not very far, I'm not bent, I'm curved. It's a curving. And then the heart begins, the hand comes down close to the body. I'm not using my arms to reach with, I'm activating my spine. I'm lifting through the erector spinae, and the heart and the sternum, everything is longing, and the eyes follow that longing. And as my spine feels the pleasure of spiraling, it takes me into an arc. This is called facing. When the arc happens and the head comes up, your vestibular system, that's your inner knowing of where you are, where your head belongs. It's not a droopy head. It's not a disassociated head. This is where you face the world. It's called facing. You literally face life, and you face the vestibular system helps you orient to the horizontal and the spine to the vertical relationship to gravity. So if you keep your head down all the time, keep your head down, stay out of everybody else's business. Nobody looks at each other. Nobody faces each other. We're terrified. What you're really doing is destroying your own expression and your own life. You're not staying safe. You're hidden. So how can a flower blossom if it can't allow itself to flourish? This is the flourishing of the core. This is the opening of your own agency, your capacity to be who you are and to show up fully in your life. So let's try the other side. All righty. The feet follow the arm. It's kind of you're guiding the curve. You're just shaping yourself. It's not just upper body, it's lower body. But one thing that doesn't happen is the pelvis doesn't do a lot of torquing. You're really opening side body. So if your side body, your ribs are too compressed, too tight, too dry, you're going to want to use the inflatable ball along your side body, rolling on it and getting some depth and width and space between the ribs and so that every rib can expand in its expression. Then the heart is the impulse of longing. And so I let it guide this expression as I feel it coming into the arc and then the flip. And then facing the world. Looking around. Yum. So there you go. Here's our little play today. I'll put it up on YouTube if you want to watch it again or share this class. But what we worked with today was the fish spine. Our spine is a fish. It's not a column, and your psoas is not a stabilizer. What's it stabilizing? You know, that's control. That's a lack of expression. That's a lack of movement. So let's stand up and we'll see how that feels internally. And so now when I stand, I might feel something that moves through my central nervous system. Synovial fluid, spinal cord fluid, you know, it is literally a gushing of fluid that moves from pelvis to skull and brain. What feeds our brain, what keeps it viable is this beautiful fluid flow of river through the tail, through the tongue. So when I stand here, I don't want to ever tuck my tail. Okay? I want to keep that tail active. The pelvis floats in connective tissue. The heart floats. We float in connective tissue. So we are a fluid organism, and we have biomorphic expression. And I hope you'll explore this biomorphic expression.